Welcome, welcome everyone to Satsang. Welcome Melissa Hoops, good to see you again. I'm tired today. So if I make some funny mental errors, laugh with me, not at me. But I think that part of the reason for that is there's been some strange energy around. And in working with students, I've been noticing, and friends, that people are having difficulties. Difficulty sleeping, just overall sense of discomfort and a little bit of weirdness. Very difficult to focus the mind all over the place. And I seem to find a common thread. Anybody else? Yes? Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. Not everybody. You're lucky. You must be sleeping with tin foil on your head or something. But there's just sometimes there's something in the ether, and there is this sort of collective consciousness. There are things that we know that affect us adversely. The way we eat, the way we sleep. Do we exercise? Do we meditate? Is our house clean? Are our bills paid? All the zenless stuff. But then there are a lot of other things too. That we don't think about, like the barometric pressure. Has the sun not been out in a few days? Some people say if Mercury is in retrograde, I don't even know what that means, but it doesn't sound good, But, as human beings, we are very, very sensitive, energetically, chemically, biologically, okay? And sometimes, in the collective consciousness, just sometimes it's just a lot harder than others, with really no real explanation. Okay? So I want you to first know that that occurs. And we've seen this in the most basic and simple of ways. You get up one morning and you're like, okay, this is a wonderful day and I really feel great and I can't wait to attack the day. And then the next day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, my life is terrible. I don't even want to be here. What's going on? And it's, same person, same life, same circumstances from day to day. Our inner state can change, and change sometimes even drastically. So, you're trying to drive this bus of this human form, this human mind body down the road, And sometimes it's easier to drive than others. And sometimes you don't know why. But I think that we can all agree that being human is not an easy thing. And so much of what happens unconsciously. Because we would not get up in the morning and consciously create some garbage state of mind for ourselves, Not something that we consciously do. But what we want to do is we want to bring consciousness to it. Okay? We might not be aware or even know why or how it's happening, but we want to be aware that it's happening. That's the first step in the process. Most people are not even aware. 95% of your practice here, when we talk about spiritual practice, is just awareness. You can't change something, you can't affect something that you're not aware of. Your friends are aware of it. Do you notice how easy it is to see other people's conditioning, other people's craziness, but to see your own? You're like, oh, I'm not crazy. You're just as crazy as them. You just can't see it. Maybe more crazy. Discomfort is a part of being human. And it's a part that we don't need to push away. The very big part of the problem is that when we start to feel discomfort, what do we want to do? Run away as fast as we can. How do I get away from this as quickly as possible? How do I make it stop? And that's when we turn to things like drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, food, whatever. Anything that distracts us, starts to come into play when we're trying to deal with our own discomfort. But many times people don't realize that discomfort is the driving force in that. All addiction is about pain. Where there's no pain, there's no addiction. And here's how it works. I'm experiencing pain, so I use something to numb my pain. That eventually creates more pain, so I need more of the substance, and it just keeps going around and around because the thing that I'm using to solve my discomfort is the thing that's causing more discomfort. Eventually, it will give you a momentary respite, a moment of peace, and then it will cause more problems. Sugar. I posted something on Facebook. Did anybody see that? There's a bag. I can't remember the exact numbers, but there's like one of those big size Ziploc bags full of sugar. And it said, the article was, if you drink one soda a day for a month, this is how much sugar you're getting into your body in a month. Just from drinking soda. Which affects your brain chemistry, which is something that, can give you a distraction, can make you numb. We all experience discomfort. And we experience it more often than we realize. And when the discomfort starts to drive the bus, that's when we start doing wacky things. So you guys experience discomfort, or am I the only one? Is this a completely inappropriate conversation? What is he talking about? I don't know. Would you use the microphone for me, please, Dawn? You may have to turn it on. No, you should do a green light when it's on.
It was weird for me to acknowledge that I was, whatever. I am at the point where I can say what you're saying or realize that I'm in a weird space. But I realized it was strange because we've just had a couple cloudy days.
Yeah.
And as much as I can even complain about, oh my God, it's too hot, it's like I'm used to the sunshine. So when there's not, it's like the seasonal affective disorder or whatever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I was like, wow, I never knew I was so sensitive to such a thing. Being one of those people that actually likes the dark and likes, you know what I mean? I'm like, it's too sunny to go out. And here I am being like, I've been depressed for the last 3 days and I don't know why.
Right.
It's because it's been cloudy.
Yeah.
Or a part of the reason,
Yeah.
I should say. I don't really know the reason, to be honest, but
Yeah, but
I'm able to be open to the prospect of that. I'm that sensitive that just even it being cloudy affects my mood.
Yes. We are definitely looking at our humanness on a much more subtle level. When you start to look at it on a subtle level, you begin to realize that it's really not quite so subtle. But you say, like you said so perfectly, I didn't even know that I was affected by these things. Most people, well, let's not say most people, but when I was, 20 years old and drinking beer and eating garbage food and staying out all night, whether it was sunny or cloudy didn't matter. There was always a cloud over me. You know what I mean? I was just I was so down that I didn't know what it felt like to feel good. And then what starts to happen is you start to feel good, and you're in your practice, and you start to feel really good, and you start to experience these moments of 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 real bliss and joy for no reason, where you just feel home, and you feel like, wow, like everything feels right. And once you start to get a taste of that, that's when you really start to see when it becomes more obvious when you're off. You know? And it's really interesting, as you begin more and more to like observe yourself, you begin to realize how subtle you are and how subtly, you are affected. The full moon, they say people go bonkers around the full moon. Well, you're like 70% water. I don't know how that affects you. It affects the tides. There could be something coincidental, or it could be something real. The police will tell you it's something real.
Well, now they're even saying there's something, the new moon, because if you imagine the waxing and the waning, so the full moon is full, you're filled up, and the waxing is like, that's where people feel like they're lacking and what's wrong, and it goes the opposite way.
Yes.
It's like manic versus, I don't want to put it that way, but
I understand. On a subtle level, though, of manic, it's really, it's really interesting when you begin, to be so aware of your own humanness. Because who here likes being in discomfort? Right? Ridiculous. Yet we do experience it more often than not, don't we? Particularly like when you're conscious and conscious of it. You become more and more aware of the subtle discomforts, and then you become more and more aware of the subtle discomforts, how they affect the way you're perceiving, how they affect the way that you're enjoying your day. There are days that just getting up and doing simple things are completely difficult. Making a meal, doing your laundry, brushing your teeth. And you feel like you have a bag of bricks tied to you, right? Simple things become difficult. I like to talk about discomfort, and I like to get people present to their discomfort. Not in a way that I want to torture you. I want, yes, sorry. Sherry?
When it's external things that are coming at you from every direction, it's hard to stay centered. And your thoughts are I feel like my thoughts were so scattered this week. A million horrific things at work crashing down, and emergencies that are flooding into personal time at night. A million emails to be answered, and appliances breaking down. A million doctor's appointments, and referrals going missing, and no one getting their things. It was just so many things out of my control coming at me. And even on the way here, something fell apart at work, and it was crashing where I had to be on my phone in the parking lot. And it's just hard. I was thinking, while we're laying here, my brain was going to work.
Yeah.
And what I have to do when I have to get home.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's things that are out of our control, that are just falling down and crashing down around us. And I was just, I don't know, I was just wanted to share that I thought to myself, okay, I'm not my thoughts. I am not these things happening. These are things around me.
Yes.
And now is the time for all my learnings and teachings to use them and
Yes.
kick in, to actually have a cognitive thought, and put it all into practice. So I'm just so thankful to be here
Yeah,
in
good
this quiet
timing, right?
space with my phone turned off. And I feel like it's just hard, and I just wanted to share with people that sometimes it's not ourselves, it's things around us, and now's the time to use what we've learned.
Yeah, there's lots that we don't control, and it's easy to get upset about these things that we don't control. The interesting thing is that we're the ones that are creating the discomfort for ourselves. Like, because these things are happening around you that you don't control, or maybe even you do have a say in, who knows, right? But there becomes this conditioned, habitual way of being that is upset. Why? Because we've born into a world where everybody is upset. Just read Facebook for 5 minutes. People can have the arguments about cheese. And what could possibly be wrong with cheese? You hate cheese? Get out. No, me and my niece were like, must have been my in another life. My God. Everything she posts is about cheese. And there was one thing that she posted where they had this big, wheel of cheese. And then they they had some torch or something, and they just melted it, and then they threw the pasta in it, and they mixed all the pasta up in the cheese. Oh my God, it was fantastic. My mouth is watering just thinking about it. Where were we anyway? I started talking about pasta. Okay.
People get upset over nothing.
Well, we're born into a world that is very upset, that people are really popping off, And we always talk about, if Tom was here, he would say, driving down, what do we call that, road Shempa, right? When, driving on 95, and people want to run each other off the road, and it's really, perhaps if you think about the way that our neurological system evolved over many tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, that, the world was not as always as safe a place as it is right now. If you look at any other animal in the world, they're always just waiting for something to pounce on them. So some of that wiring, that old wiring, that old very primitive wiring is in us, and we have to deal with that. We are animals, you know what I mean? We're here talking and we're wearing clothes, but it's, we're part of all of this, This is our version of National Geographic. And so, again, the first thing is to be aware that discomfort is there. And I think that we can all agree that if you really look, I don't mean provoke, I mean just observe, you will see that throughout your day, discomfort just very easily comes and goes. Sometimes the phone rings and you're like, what now? And there's this tension and this holding on. But the good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. Again, consciously, you would never create that for yourself, true? Right? So we know that we're creating it unconsciously. So now we want to bring consciousness to it and understand what to do with it. Now I am always trying to seat you as the self, okay? And the self is that which is aware of all things outside you and in the same exact way, same exact perspective, aware of all things inside you. And just like the things outside you very clearly are not you, the things inside you are not you either. The thoughts, the discomfort, the energies. There is something that is observing all of these. The self, the pure awareness that is aware of the thoughts, that is aware of the sensations, that is aware of the humanness. And so I'm always trying to seat you and remind you that you are not the discomfort. You are the one that is aware of the discomfort. Very, very important. So do you see this? This is where I kind of want to slow down and hear a little bit more from you, because this is where you're going to get confused most likely. Because we become identified as this mind-body. And for those of you who are new and just hearing this conversation for the first time, you know, this might sound a little odd. But I promise you that it's not. Please, would you use the microphone, please?
I'm usually aware of my discomfort, and I bring attention to it, which causes me more anxiety.
Good point. Because then you have to be responsible, so then it's ethical.
It's what?
You feel it's ethical, because now all of a sudden, if you're aware of it, you should be able to change it. It's this ethical, I don't need to override you into that, but is there what you're saying? Like, then you.
Yeah,
you're
I'm always aware of my
but
discomfort.
it doesn't mean you can change it. Doesn't mean you can wipe it away.
Yeah, you see, this is where it starts to get a little squirrely, because I think that that's very natural. Is that what people do is they start to feel this discomfort, and then they start to get upset that they're upset. And it used to happen for me, like if something sad happened, or like I broke up with a girl or something, and I would be sad, and then I would be angry that I was sad. And that made me just sad and angry, which was just really pleasant. And so I hear what you're saying, that...
No, but I'm making a little bit of a distinction. I'm
Please.
just saying, like, it's almost kind of eerily, how do you separate it? Because, like, then when you get cognizant of being able to be self-aware enough to be like, you know what, I'm sad, because this happened and it's cloudy and I didn't eat right. Or you can even culminate why you're sad, but you can't change it. And then because you're aware, it puts responsibility on you. Because you're like, okay, now I'm cognizant. If I wasn't aware, then it was like, oh, like a little kid, doing crazy stuff. Like, he doesn't know. You can't judge him. But now you're aware of it.
Right.
But you still can't necessarily get out of it or
Right.
change it. So then there's a judgment of the fact that you're aware of the fact that you're aware and still can't make a change. Oh my God. And so you're like in this, exactly, you're looking in the mirror. It's the Alice in Wonderland. You're looking in the mirror to the mirror to the mirror to the mirror. And you're like, but it's almost, I don't know if anyone, maybe I'm just, I don't know, but like there's a hyper aware moment of transition where it's really cool when you can be like, oh yeah, I'm pissed off because I didn't eat enough fiber and it's cloudy and I'm PMSing, but still I'm a psycho bitch. So I still can't change the fact of my behavior, even though I'm aware of what the cause is. So then I'm judging myself on the fact that here you are self-aware, but you can't, what does that even mean? So now you're just tortured of how ridiculous you're being. At least before you were unconscious about you being an asshole. Now you're conscious of it and you can't do anything about it. So now you're double whammied almost. Am I being crazy?
No,
like
does that sound familiar?
I feel like I'm in the zone, yeah.
Right?
Where I can identify it. I can even name the causes, but I can't change it, which makes me feel even more ridiculously powerless and awful. And then I judge myself.
And then you beat the crap out of yourself.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then it's time to go to happy hour.
Yeah.
So there we go again.
And it just keeps getting inflamed that way. You know, I never said that you can control it or should control it. And this is why I'm always trying to help you remain seated as the self. You just observe it without judgment. I mean, because clearly you can't control it, right?
I'm sorry, and I'm glad that you can do that, but most of us here, I don't want to speak in the forum, but like you want to change it. You want to change your emotional affect. Like, okay,
Yes.
even if you can identify it, okay, it's cloudy. As I said, I didn't eat right. I've been, whatever. I haven't been working out. Like
Mhm.
I had a fight with my boyfriend. Whatever it is, work is stressful.
Mm-hmm.
You could make an excuse for it, but still the fact almost is like a double curse. The fact that you're aware of it makes you feel like you should be able to change it. And then if you can't, there's this judgment that happens of, oh my gosh, I'm aware and still I'm a psycho. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like, who am I? And like, what can I, it's just like this feeling like you're spiraling out of control, the black hole syndrome, like you're, I don't know if anyone experiences that, but it's almost worse in a weird way. It's this transitional point maybe where you're aware but you're not ready to take the immediate action to say, okay, I need a beach walk, or I need to stop thinking about this, or I need to meditate, because as you said, you're judging yourself. It's the ego. It's
Yeah.
not your pure self, but your ego is saying, what the, I mean, really? Like, you're self-aware. You should be able to control this stuff. Now that you know that you're sad, you should be able to change your circumstance, but you can't. And then you judge yourself. Well, you judge yourself that you can't. And then it's like this double whammy where being aware is almost worse than not being aware. So then you want to check out again.
Well, but being aware is only worse because your ego is using your awareness of what's happening to knock you over the head.
But that's what I'm saying is I'm even aware, Tommy, that that's actually happening, which is even what makes it worse, is because I'm aware
Okay.
of the fact that my ego, I'm aware that I can't see clearly. I'm even aware of the fact that I'm even enjoying this punishment, because then I can go back to the way that I am. Oh, you know what? It's worthless. It's hopeless. Let's just have a drink. Let's just go do what we do.
And
But
that,
it's
and
a
that's how the
cycle that I'm stuck in that I can't get out of.
Okay. Just give me a moment. I want you to always remember that you're human. And that so much of what happens inside your humanness is automatic. And when you want control, you're in trouble. When you're trying to control something that you don't control, you're going to be in a tug of war that you're never going to win. When you remain seated as the self, you're just observing your humanness. Even if the mind is coming off the rails, you can have incredible peace with that. You don't want to react from it. You don't want to use it as an excuse for bad behavior. An excuse to do things that you know you don't really want to do. And so the idea is to be able to sit in that fire and not move, because what you're describing is going to happen. Everybody in this room has experienced it, some on the way here, and this is going to happen. The challenge is not moving in the face of that extreme discomfort. Because once you stare that discomfort down, something happens. once it can poke you and motivate you and make you do stuff, now you got a game that you're playing in your mind. You know, like that your mind is just, you know, making you dance.
I guess what I'm asking you, Tommy, is what do you do when you're on that borderline, when you're able to see the dance, but part of you sickly likes the dance? Part of you is like, yeah, you get a 9 today, you get a 6 today. Like you're addicted to the judgment of yourself to monitor, and not even in a bad way, but to monitor and direct your behavior. You know, but then when it becomes you're aware of your behavior, how do you not become ethically, and again, I know this is like ego, but how do you not become ethically involved in that to say, I recognize that I'm this way. So like, honestly, I shouldn't go to work. I mean, I've had those days.
Mm-hmm.
I work with extreme kids. Like, I honestly, like, if I was going to be ethical, I should not go to work.
Mm-hmm.
But I need the money, and I'm just giving a superficial example.
Sure,
I'm
sure.
just saying, like, with with the mind, it becomes really complicated when you are aware. I guess what I'm trying to say is when you're at the borderline, when you're aware of the situation, and as you said, yes, you can be aware of like all the concomitants that could happen with, but like you can't escape it. You have to go to work, or you have to, deal with your kids, or you have to, do what you do.
Function.
Yeah, you can't just say I need a break and vacate, but you're carrying this burden of knowing you're reacting this way, but yet you can't change the channel right away. Like you can't switch it because there's this, again, as you're saying, this shouldn't be involved, but this ego component, which is like, I'm aware, so I should be able to change it. I should be able to say, this is not, right for me, so I shouldn't do it.
How about we change the language a little bit to how can I work with it? You know what I mean? Like how can I work with my own human craziness? And from a conscious place, knowing what a difficult neurological pattern, you know what I mean, that I'm dealing with. How do I deal with my own craziness is the question, right? The first thing is embrace your own craziness. We're all batshit crazy. And everybody here's got at least 100 stories that will prove me right. Okay? So you gotta understand that you're human. You don't make any sense. And you can't try to be this like perfect human that controls everything and I'm perfect and all of this other stuff. It's not like that. It's that when your human craziness comes up, what is your relationship to your human craziness? Do you beat yourself up? Do you use it as an excuse for bad behavior? Or can you just watch it? Can you just peacefully watch it as the self and know, yeah, my mind is coming off the rails? Go ahead. I know you have some more to say.
Sorry,
We'll get to you.
Well,
Antoinette.
I'm not normally a monopolizer.
No, that's
within
fine. That's fine.
Conversation.
This is
So
good.
obviously this is a Vassana or something I'm going through.
Yeah.
But it's just like, this is the most frustrating thing is what I'm saying is like, what do you do at that borderline though, where you are aware that you are having an effect on the universe, for example, like your mood or what's going through with you, all the other in a culmination of things, and you're aware of it, but you have to function in reality.
The minimum.
And then it still happens.
Yeah.
And yet this is what I mean, is that somehow the ego is still presently struggling with the consciousness or the self and is saying, hijacking almost the consciousness and saying, because you're aware of it, damn girl, you should be able to get the reins in control. Like the horses are out of control. You're aware that they're out of control. So you should be able to rein it in, so to speak. And then when you can't rein it in, it's almost this double conundrum of the fact that being aware makes you feel responsible, that you should be able to take an actionary approach to rein it in. Whether it be, I'm going to empathize with that person that's in road rage right now, and I'm not going to cut them off and flick them off. Whether it's dealing with a kid with autism, and you're like, okay, they're freaking out and trying to escape, but I'm not going to judge them. Whatever it is, there happens to be this juxtaposition of the ego and the consciousness in a struggle, where it's like, awesome, you have consciousness, but then you should do right action. You should know right action. And then if you don't do right action, I'm sorry, I'm human, and maybe that's the ego, but then there's the judgment of even worse, the fact that you are aware and you didn't do right action. You didn't do empathy, or you didn't,
Mm-hmm.
Am I just, I don't know.
No, can y'all relate?
But I'm just saying, this is my problem, is as I get to the point, but I don't necessarily do right action, and then I'm judging myself. I'm even aware of the fact that I'm judging myself for not doing it, but still, it's present.
Are you aware of perfectionism? You putting the mic down?
Take the mic.
No, I think that you have set a standard for yourself that is unattainable.
No, I want to interrupt and just saying, this is a process I feel like everybody goes through when you become self-aware. It's like a double conundrum, because it's like this weird thing. You're so self-aware, but you still can't necessarily control your actions. So it's like a double whammy, because you're like aware of your actions, but still your body does what it does. It's in, as you said, you're in the rut, like for 23 years, 43, however years old you are, you've been taking this screen, you're in the current. And even if you want to be outside of the current, you get stuck in the current. And because you're aware, you're judging yourself and being like, why can't I get out of this? Why am I just but yet you can't. You're stuck.
Yeah.
But if it's something like you're hangry or something like that, I'll get that, where I'm like, why am I in a bad mood? And then I look, oh yeah, I haven't eaten in 5 hours. Yeah. And then as soon as I eat, I'm like, okay, all those things that I was complaining about. I was driving up to North Florida, going camping one weekend, and 4 hours into the drive, I like driving, and it was a good time, and it was a nice day and everything. And I was just getting pissed off. And I was like, stupid camping. Whose idea was this to even go camping? It's this, dumbest thing. I'm turning around. I'm never doing this again. And then I went to Publix, ate some wings in the parking lot, and I get there and I was in a great mood. So I almost think that sometimes you are aware and you're like, why am I in such a bad mood? And then when you start realizing consciously, okay, there are steps I can take, but it depends. There are certain things like, if it is, that time of the month, or if it's something where, you had a bad day at work, it's harder to digest that and kind of twist it. But depending on, I think you have to find the core of it, right? As to what the problem is, and then see if there are things you can attack. And if there aren't, hey, this is just that day, or I didn't get enough sleep, and then start over. It would be kind of.
Yeah.
My question though would be.
Go ahead. No, please go ahead.
My question would be on the opposite side of it. So I'm an empath, and I really feel people's energy, and I just kind of learned that word, that's what I am. But everything I've read online really describes it. So I've been dating a girl for about, let's call it 4 or 5 months. And when she's in a bad mood, I feel all that energy, and then it's the same thing. I get upset that she's giving me the energy, so now I'm making the situation worse. And then, it's not fair to her, because now she's in a worse mood because of, what I'm doing. But then you're really stuck in it too, because it's I'm pulling this vibe. I'm sitting there watching TV, and I'm like, what are you thinking about? And she's like, how do you know I'm thinking? I'm like, I can just hear your thoughts. Go do something else, because I'm trying to enjoy, this show. And then it puts more stress on me, and then I get an argument with her, and then the next day I feel bad. So it's just.
You guys both have to eat chicken wings.
Well, she's a vegetarian, but it's like everything, yeah, yeah, really, but.
Well, as an empath, when someone says they're empathetic, you understand what that means, everyone? Does anybody not understand what an empath is? An empath is someone that can feel people's energies. I think that we're all empaths to a certain degree, but I think that some of us are far more sensitive, okay? Ever since I was a little kid, I was extraordinarily sensitive empathetically, okay? Which made things very confusing for me. Because I would feel people's energies, and I would know that something was wrong, you know what I mean? And it was something that was very much on the surface for me. And, when I'm working with students one-on-one, I'm not just mentoring them just cognitively. I'm feeling their energies. I can feel my way through things. Only part of what I do is cognitive. Now, this is something that I had to become aware of, too, and understand what it is and how it works. Again, the general tone of this conversation is, what do I do when I'm in discomfort? And everyone is seeing the results of their discomfort. And Dawn is saying, I'm out of control. I'm in so much discomfort that I can't even change my own behavior. Okay? You got to start where you are and understand that you're not going to go from, first grade to 8th grade in one leap. This is why, speaking to Dawn for a moment, you've got to have a strong practice that when things are good, you're still practicing, that you're meditating every day, that you're eating well every day, that you're balancing yourself, so that when those times come, there's some momentum to your practice, and that it's a little bit more familiar, okay? And when those times come, look, the bottom line is, you got to do the best that you can. And sometimes the best that you can is really shitty, But you got to accept that and not beat the crap out of yourself about that, But what will happen is you will become more skilled as a practitioner. And as you become more skilled as a practitioner, that will start to wane. Okay? There will be times when you will be able to say no to bad behavior, where you will say, no, I am not following this conditioned path. And when you don't participate in your conditioning, you are starting to pull that wiring apart. When you participate in your conditioning, you start to strengthen that neurological wiring in your mind. And so you have these patterns that have been happening for decades, for many, many years. And now you're saying, okay, I'm conscious of them. Well, good. You're conscious of them. That's very, very, very important. But your expectation can't be that now that I'm conscious of what I've been doing for 20 years, that I'm going to change it like that. This is a gradual process. And if you look, I bet you will see that you are better at it now than you used to be. And that's something that I say to myself all the time. I'm like, well, I'm better than I was.
You are better than you were, but it felt better to be in those habitual ways of escapism or whatever. So you're at that murky point. I guess that's what I'm trying to express, is what do you get when you're at that murky point where you know right action and what you should do or whatever, but you don't or whatever. And the fact that it's almost like, I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like your consciousness you've realized you're a conscious being. And you've realized you have ego. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, I want to be conscious and tame the ego, so to speak, or realize the ego. But the ego is so strong that it's like, you know what? Let's race. And you're like, oh, yeah, bitch, bring it. And yet you can't, because it's like you even have empathy for your ego, like to be like, I know what you're trying to do because it makes my life easier. But I'm on this impasse. I'm on this, I want to say it as a transitional point. Like, I know what's good for me. I know, all the things. I've been with Tommy, for like 8 years. I'm ready to do it. And yet there's still this like rabbit tortoise frickin' hair. Let's do it. And I'm aware that I'm doing it. So I'm engaging my ego. I'm aware that I cannot see clearly because I'm still engaging my ego. But yet, I want the fight to be like, I'm conscious and I can overcome this. Bitch, I will do it. I can be, and so there's this struggle of even being aware of the fight and yet not being able to debunk the fight. Does it make any sense?
Practice isn't kicking in anywhere.
I want to comment just
Okay.
because I kind of feel like I've been there, and when I'm struggling, and I'm a perfectionist for sure, but I have just decided to tell myself, this is where I am. This is what I'm doing right now. And I'm making that decision. Like, so I'm not fighting with myself anymore. I'm saying, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be grumpy right now, or I'm going to be, and I don't know if that makes it a shorter duration or if that, but I say, okay, this is where I am right now. And I just have to be okay with it.
And you don't resist it, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
And lots of times I have conversations in my own head, and I've read somewhere or something, talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend. Would you say, oh, you're being an idiot? Why? You say, no, you're okay. Look, you did this right. You did this right. Come on. You're getting there.
That's very helpful.
But I think that what ultimately will happen in addition to that is that you're just going to get tired of suffering your own choices.
I'm not talking about suffering. I'm not talking about, and I'm sorry because but
No,
I'm
make it
talking about
clear
when you're
because-
at the brink, of the struggle of you're consciously aware of being conscious, and yet you are habitually stuck in a rut for how you've been brought up for the past, 43, 40,
Right.
whatever age you are. So there's this conscious awareness of, I want to change, and yet you're not changing. So then you're aware of the fact that you're not changing, and you're even aware that you shouldn't be judging changing, but you're human. And so you have this dichotomy going on between awareness and the awareness of self. So you're not judging yourself because you're aware of the self and being like, okay, who knows, you had a bad day, the weather, you didn't eat right. You're even kind to yourself. You're like, it's okay, baby, you're good. But I'm kind to myself, so you know what? It's okay, but change then. Now be a positive impact on the universe. But no, you're going to sit there and eat popcorn and watch TV. Really? Great. What are you doing? So now you're judging. Do you see what I'm saying? You become aware, and then it's a very Western phenomenon. You're aware of the problem, diagnose the problem, what is the solution, implement the solution, and then when you don't, you judge yourself. So how do you get to the point of non-judgment where you're aware of the changes that you need to do, but even though you're not doing it, you're compassionate toward yourself?
Who is the one that is judging?
Obviously, that's what I was saying, not the ego, not the self, but I'm
Okay.
saying the ego is still there. I cannot...
All right, and who
I'm
is the one that is aware of the ego? Stay with me. Just everybody stay with me on this.
the self, or the self-awareness, if you want to call it that, consciousness.
You see, the problem is not that the judgment is there. The problem is that you are become identified as the judgment.
But I'm even aware of the fact that I've done that. So that's a double whammy. So it would be fine if I was just oblivious to that. But I'm aware of that, and I still cannot segregate or bifurcate the connection between the
Yes.
ego and the self.
Yes, the reason for that is because you have still a conceptual understanding of the self and not a direct experiencing of the self, other than perhaps maybe momentarily. Okay? Because when you are truly seated as it's so hard to describe being the self. The self is what you are. You always have been. The self is not something that you become. The self is something that you always are, that was always in observance, and the self is in observance of this whole tennis match that's going on in your mind. But most people have not directly experienced the self. They know the self because I have described the self and I have pointed, this is what the self looks, and I'm trying to help you understand. But the self is not a mental understanding, and everything that you are describing is a mental understanding, which is why you are going around the manhole over and over again.
Okay, but in my defense, what I'm trying to say to you, and
Whoa,
I so
whoa,
appreciate you saying that, but is like because I'm having this experience of let it go, be with, like empathy, and it's literally happening. I don't know if you've seen like when people show the pictures of like, look at one perspective and you see an old woman, you look at another perspective and you see a young woman. It's this understanding of how you can switch perspectives. But it's literally like kind of what I'm trying to acknowledge is a growth pattern that I'm having of I'm transitioning between being aware, but there's a part of me that's like, I see the old woman. Oh, I see the new woman. I see the old woman. Does that make sense? Like it's a different perspective.
You're comfortable with the old woman.
Listen, time
you're
out for a
wiring.
second. I want you, when we're in satsang, I always want to make sure everybody is directing their comments toward me, okay? So just make sure that if you want to comment about yourself, just comment toward me, because once we start to get the crosstalk going, that's not the purpose of satsang.
I'm just saying that I feel like there's a transitional point, and I feel like Alex is kind of understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah, but just speak it to me. Okay. Just try and keep it about yourself, okay?
I believe that one can be comfortable with that chaos, kind of. It's like your wiring is just so used to that fight or flight, that norepinephrine. You're comfortable in that state of stress. So when your body starts saying, oh, I should be calm, that comfortability is saying, no, you shouldn't, because that's what's comfortable. And she might be at that balance of going into that uncomfortableness of actually calm, has become uncomfortable for her. That fight or flight, that uncomfortability is actually what's comfortable. And you just haven't been able to rewire that, that fight or flight, that norepinephrine, that whole like go, and just not be able to like flip that switch. So it's like you're almost comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah. What do you call it? Comfort in your own discomfort. But I still am not sure that I have 100% heard your question, and I think that it is an important question. And I know that you're trying to describe it to me in many different ways.
Okay, so my question was, what happens when you're kind of at that brink? Okay, you're at the precipice.
Of?
Like you've decided to climb the Appalachian Trail, but like now you're at the top. So you're still aware of the fact that your ego is in play. Like you're literally aware that it's in play, but yet you can't control it. And so because the consciousness is at the same time in play, you can't help, not the self, so piggybacking on the, still identifying with the ego, as you said, Alex, which I so appreciate. You're still so comfortable being uncomfortable that there's still the ego judging you, saying, if you're truly self-aware, you should be able to make appropriate life-changing choices, whether it's to clean your house and follow the Zen list. You should be, like that should be obvious. But yet, even though you're self-aware, that body or that ego is not in compliance with your self-awareness. It's almost like you grew spiritually, but your body didn't grow with it. Still judging you, saying, since you're self-aware, you should be able to not be suffering. But you're suffering talking about your self-awareness. It's like, how do you navigate that transitional point?
Let me explain. What starts to happen as you are a burgeoning consciousness? And this is something that happens gradually over a long period of time usually. When you are truly stepping out of identification with mind, when you are truly realizing that you are not the thoughts in your mind. It's scary as hell, and you begin to oscillate. Okay? Because the world that you know is a conceptual world in your head. And the only place that it exists is in your head. Nobody else's. It's your world. You're the only one in it. Your conceptual idea of yourself is a story in your head. And you're the only one that knows it. And the people that know you have their own story of you. Which one are you? Right? When you begin to step out of identification with mind, your mind very likely will start screaming. Why? Because you feel like you're disappearing. You feel like everything that you know, you're realizing is not real. Even you. Even the mind made you begin to start realizing is not real. To a point where it's so undeniable to you that you just can't deny it anymore. And you begin oscillating between those two worlds. And you have probably had moments on the beach or somewhere in nature or something where it all let go. And you were like, wow. I don't know what this is, but oh my God. I'm home. That place is a non-conceptual place. It is simply being. You are sitting as the self. You have transcend mind. But what happens when you start to get too far away from your mind is you go running back. And you grab on and you hold on. Because it isn't, they say that if you want enlightenment, be prepared to sweat white beads. Your whole world and your whole idea of yourself is a concept in your mind. And someone who's been around for 8 years, that's been coming every week, and I take another chisel out of the wall, another chisel out of the wall, you're getting close to the fire. And your mind starts to go a little apeshit. It's only scary until you experience it directly. But there will be this oscillating. Your winning formula, the way that you win in life, what you rely on is your intellect, is your intelligence. You think your way out of everything. And you're wanting to think your way into enlightenment, it will never work. And so you start to get pulled back into the mind and I have to figure this out. Why am I not? No. What's the saying at the Peaceful Mind Center? You figured it out. Once you figure out that there's nothing to figure out and you're still trying to figure it out. And that's the problem. That's what keeps pulling you back up into your mind, is you're trying to figure it out. You got to just let it be. You don't want to act from that crazy state of mind. You know what I mean? That crazy state of mind can be there, and it can be telling you to do all kind of crazy things, and it can be creating all kinds of pain and discomfort in you that will motivate you. Because if I light your butt on fire, you're going to run down the street. And that's metaphorically what your mind is trying to do. It's going to make you so uncomfortable that you move. But you have to sit in that discomfort and not move. And that separates the men from the boys. Or the women from the...
Okay, well, separating the girls from the men, I'm going to say, sorry, hon, that's not what happened to me. What actually happened is I became incredibly empathetic empathetic, I guess would be the word. And there was this brilliant ability to relate to other people, to see their life circumstances, to not be stressed by them, to open up to them. All of that happened. So it wasn't a negative thing. It was quite honestly a brilliant thing, but there still was what you were saying. There was still this disconnect of, well, then I can help you because I can empathize with you. I can take control of the situation. And because it's for the children, you know, I can take the fact that you could empathize with the kids and we could make that a goal. We could make it objective. So again, the ego steps forth. So I'm saying, like, in a weird way, there was still such a growth of me being able to relinquish, identify, relate. Oh my gosh, this ability that I didn't even have to take other people's voice and opinion. But there was still this ego that was like, okay, let's collate, let's officiate, let's make it happen, let's dictate, let's action,
that part
manifest. So that's what I'm trying to say is I'm struggling with. I didn't have this disconnect. In fact, I had this, wow, we all connect. Everybody's so worthwhile that I was able to maintain these beautiful relationships with all these people to find that they're dissatisfied, but to be like, how can we culminate that? But then my ego took forth and said, yes, I am the leader. Let's culminate it and make change, and we can So how do you navigate that? Like, how do you navigate seeing clearly and still your ego hijacks the situation?
You have to see clearly when you're getting pulled back into your mind.
But I'm still doing, in my mind, I'm still doing the best I can for the kid.
Yeah, but
so
you're
how is that being ego?
I don't know if I can take this any further here now.
Okay, that makes sense.
You know?
I just wanted to let you know that it doesn't always have to go that way as a negative thing. It could be that you really feel the positive energy with everybody, but it's still kind of culminating that.
Like, I can tell you that specifically what is happening is that you are getting drawn back into identification with mind, and the mind starts driving the bus. If I'm hearing you clearly,
no, I'm acknowledging that. I'm saying, so how do you not let the mind drive the bus?
How do you ever not get pulled up into your mind? How do you?
No, but when you're at the point when you still can see clearly, when you're at the bifurcation point, when you can see clearly that this could help somebody, you can empathize with other people, but you still realize you're attached emotionally or intellectually or career-wise or however it is. How do you, at that point, see clearly?
Well, what are you not seeing clearly?
I'm not seeing clearly the transition point when you think, again, I'm talking about ego, you think that you can see clearly, but yet your ego is obviously still involved. Like, obviously you're still thinking in terms of your ego because you're thinking, oh, for example, I'm empathetic towards all these people, so I can cultivate all their empathy and make something happen. So I'm still egocentrically involved. So how do you, I don't know, maybe no one else is experiencing this. It's like,
no,
it's almost like I'm
trying to clarify.
Self-aggrandizing. It's like, I see clearly, so I want everybody to see clearly. And so now it's my job to help everybody see clearly, which is obviously the ego speaking. So I hear the ego speaking, but yet I still want the result, which I feel is a good result. Like, it comes from my soul. Like, I want the best for this kid. I'm not doing this to further my career or to make myself look good. I'm doing this selfishly. So again, it's the ego. So I'm looking through the ego to judge the ego.
Yeah,
and so how do I get away from doing that? when I think I'm seeing clearly. Like I'm literally thinking I'm being empathetic and seeing clearly. And I'm saying, I'm telling you I'm not, because obviously I'm still ego endowed, but yet I'm at that precipice point where I can see, I don't know, I can see what's in it for me, so to speak. I can see the ego, and then I can see, okay, this is what's not in for me. What's not in for me is I want the best for this kid, for example.
Mhm.
But still, I'm trying to dictate. So still, that's the ego. So I'm trying to ask, what do you get to the precipice point when you're capable of being self-aware? The self is capable of seeing itself as the observationalist, as the person who's perceiving, but yet you're still not ready to change your behavior. So you're watching your behavior. How do you not judge, I guess is the question. How do you not then judge your behavior? Because now you're at the point of seeing your behavior. So surely you should be able to do right action.
Okay. Mind is still very strong in you. And so mind is using a little bit these spiritual teachings. And mind is kind of masking itself as spirituality. Now, how do I know that? Because if you were seated as the self, we would not be having this conversation.
But that's what I'm saying, Tommy, is I know I'm doing it.
That's
and
what I'm
thank
saying.
you. But then how do you
Yeah, but
get out of knowing that you're doing it?
This is where it becomes very difficult, you know what I mean, for me as a teacher, because you have a mental understanding. You know what I mean? And so what's happening is that you are still using spirituality and on the level of mind. And this is beyond the level of mind. You know? And so you're getting in this sort of dog chasing its tail thing because you're still dealing, even though you're using spiritual axioms and things, you know what I mean? It's still mind on the level of mind, which is why you get so tied up, because you're tied up in your mind and you know what I mean? And to throw something else in that soup, there is also that little bit of awareness that is getting glimpses of all of this happening, and that's there too. But this is imbued with mind. It's so much mind. And so you have to realize, and your mind is working double, triple, quadruple overtime to figure this out. That is not something that self does. And so when this goes on in your head, you just watch it. And we can carry on about this at another time, because I want to get to some other people's questions. But it will take, if that were happening in my mind, I would just be watching it and be unaffected by it. It's not that can't happen in the mind, and that doesn't, it's not any evaluation of your practice or anything like that. But when my mind is doing those types of things, when my ego wants to come and get up, I watch it just like I watch this orchid, and it's nothing to me. You know what I mean? And you're getting tied up in your mind. Whether you and you're saying I realize it, but you only kind of really half realize it. But it's been a wonderful exchange, because lots of people are experiencing exactly what you're experiencing, or in their own way. And this is the difficulty, and remember this, when you're dealing with mind on the level of mind, as opposed to dealing with mind as the self. And the mind, the ego, will hijack your spirituality, and it will tiptoe in the back, start whispering in your ear. You're an empath, you know what I mean? You can feel this, you can feel that. Let me go yell at my girlfriend, you know what I mean? And it'll all seem so spiritual. Antoinette, you have been waiting so patiently, would you?
It's okay, go ahead. I don't remember what the hell
I apologize. I
was saying sometimes if you start speaking, it
I want to get on to something you said a while ago about embracing, and I think that's really a key is to, and I know this isn't talking really, probably not even talking about what you were talking about, like if I have a feeling or a thought or that I'm angry or I'm sad or whatever. And this is maybe this isn't appropriate to say, but my shrink, my psychiatrist always told me, Suzanne, embrace it and sit in it. Sit in the pain and watch it, like you said. And in doing that, and I would say, I don't want to, doctor. This is too much. I don't want to. He goes, what's going to happen if you do? You know, of course, I need to have, if it's happening and I have to get to work or whatever, I have to tell myself, I'll revisit this later. You know, I can compartmentalize.
Right.
Okay, but the thing, what I found with that is embracing it and sitting in it is not only, it takes so much of the power away from it that I may not even revisit it later. And it takes that wanting to control, wanting to fix this, make this better, make it go away. And I've kind of learned this through, unfortunately, grief. I've learned this, very hard lesson, and had to. And the one thing that she was talking about was somebody said about being comfortable. You know, my doctor once said to me, Suzanne, are you very comfortable in this grief?
In this what?
In your grief.
Yeah.
You're very comfortable in this because you feel if you don't grieve Paul anymore, what happens?
Right.
You know, and so it's just something to look at, you know, for me.
Yeah. It's very strange at first to be in life but not be thinking about life. And it seems almost impossible. But I promise you that in your practice, as you let go of this sort of addiction to thinking, that something very interesting happens. When I say that you live in a thought-based world, you get the impact of that statement? Maybe not. Your entire world is a story. Sometimes I refer to it as your book, right? That you have your own book that you wrote and you're reading. And if you can imagine yourself sitting there reading the book of your life, I use that metaphor just to show you that it's just a story in your head. It's mind-blowing when you see that. The story's not real. The story always changes. It's ideas, concepts in your mind. And you're believing yourself to be that. If there were no thoughts in your head, would you still be here? And what would be here? You are not required to think to be a human being. Yet your whole life And everything is this mental cognitive understanding. Now, why is that important? Because that's a cause of suffering. You don't suffer what happens. You suffer your thoughts about what happens. And sadness is not suffering. We live in a world bound to impermanence and change. And things come and go. And there's sadness. Experience your sadness. It's cathartic. It's an energetic release. But the question to ask yourself is, how do I go beyond these thoughts? How do I let go of thoughts? How do I sit in this moment and take 3 breaths without thinking?
That was going to be my question.
Good question. Your question is what, Jordan?
It's kind of when you have so many different thoughts going on in your head, I guess when it comes to relationships, jobs, whatever it may be, sometimes I just have a problem sitting there without these thoughts. So if I stop thinking about the job, I start thinking about the relationship. If I'm not thinking about that, I'm like, maybe I should clean my room. And there's never just a time of absolute just, sitting there in complete solitude. And what I realized was I was going through a breakup a couple of years ago, and I went away to Colorado, and I was in the mountains, and I'm just like, it doesn't matter where you are. These thoughts just continue with you. So you can be sitting on the beach. So, obviously it takes years of practice. I know you mentioned you were here for 8 years, so I shouldn't expect to leave tonight being like, I'm perfect and everything's good tomorrow. But, where's the best place to, when you're meditating or taking deep breaths or whatever it may be in that 5 minutes throughout the day to kind of get that recharge? Where's the best place to kind of focus your energy or visualize that you are? Because obviously, throughout your practice and all the years you've been doing this, you're clearly able to observe yourself from kind of a separate cell, if you will. They talk about people that have been in solitary confinement in prison, and they're able to envision an entire world outside of their cell, and they're living in a completely different life than where they physically are. So it sounds like in some ways you're able to, observe I'm in a bad mood or I'm hungry, but still maintain a sense of inner peace for that moment. So kind of what would the beginning step be to kind of even get 5 seconds of thoughtlessness would be nice for me.
The thoughts will be there in your mind. It's the nature of mind that thoughts arise. But without your attention, thoughts are powerless. They don't even really exist without your attention for all intents and purposes. It's only the thoughts that you give your attention to. Okay? So, where the real peace and solace is being in the present moment. What that means, being in the present moment, is holding your attention completely in the present moment. No past, no future. The only way we experience past and future is in the form of thoughts, in the form of memories, thoughts about the past, in the form of imagination, thoughts about the future. But when you are just present in the moment, all of that falls away. What could trouble you? All you are is here in this moment, breathing. But when you're thinking about the future, it stirs you up. Sometimes when you're thinking about the past, can stir you up. Not always, you know what I mean? But we're talking about the suffering time. So what I would do if I was at work, and I would keep, and I do this throughout the day constantly, keep realigning my attention to be in the moment and not somewhere else. Because you're going to notice that you're sitting at your desk and you're at the beach or you're on a mountain. I mean, you can close your eyes right now and be right back on that mountain in Colorado, right? You can be there. When are you here? It's funny, the only place we ever really are is here. But that's the place where most people never are.
When I was able to put that together and realize that when you're present, you're present. Mm-hmm. And when you're thinking about the past, your mind and body believes that it's in that moment. Yeah. It's in that past.
Yeah.
And your chemical reactions are going to react to that past because your mind and your body don't know any different. Yeah. So if you're thinking about the future and you start getting anxious about something, your body really thinks it's there. thinks it's in that, it knows no different. So when you stay focused and you stay present, your body's not going to have that chemical reaction, and you can kind of be in that peaceful state.
Being present is the key to this practice. You know, when you're present in the moment, if there was one thing that I would tell you, just be present. Have your attention here where you are. You practice that and practice that and practice that. And you will find that you go through life so peacefully.
Yeah, and I've practiced mindfulness a bit, and I think, I've got off of Instagram and Facebook and all those things, and I was thinking about it the other day when I woke up, actually, is that, within the first 5 seconds of waking up, I have my phone in my hand, and I'm like, generation or two ago there was TV, but it's like, if you go back 100, 200 years, you woke up and whatever you had yesterday was in front of you today.
Right.
And now it's so different, and I think it's even like you kind of never have a chance to disconnect, because there's always this, like, in the back of your mind is, hang on, was that my phone that buzzed? And
Right.
you're feeling it in your pocket.
Yeah.
And I think it really subconsciously just messes with you, and we're kind of like, like you mentioned, we've evolved over thousands and thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and now we're suddenly in this moment where the technology is more advanced than what we were ever really prepared for. And I think it makes it even kind of harder. And I've tried to practice mindfulness as much, and maybe I need to just turn my phone off at night, and that's it after work hours, because I think that makes it just that much harder, because you start living in someone else's life almost, where
there's a lot, it's the information age, and there's a lot of information and a lot of interesting things. There's so much going on. You can buy something on Amazon and have it at your door in 2 days, and there's just so much available to you. Every piece of information that was ever written is available to you on that phone. And so, there's a lot of information, so you have to learn how to mitigate, overloading your mind. It's like this thirst for knowledge nowadays, can be fed so, ferociously. And you can get stuck in this sort of insatiable quest to know, and that pulls you further and further away from the spiritual path. You will drown your mind in knowledge, and then you'll just have all of this knowledge in a very overactive mind. And so, that's why I always really, and we're going to get to our meditation because it's getting late, but I always encourage everyone to have a daily meditation practice. And I'm writing a book called, a book on meditation for beginners. Someone was asking in one of the groups I had, does anybody know a good book on meditation for beginners? I'm like, that's an awesome name for a book, right? So I'm going to call it right? And I'm also going to come up with, like, perhaps a little online course, that just people stepping into satsang can take and really kind of get the foundation of what that's doing, because this is really the PhD class on Wednesdays. This has been going on for 10 years, and you can see that we dig into things very deeply here, which I love to do, and I appreciate all of your comments. And Dawn, that was really juicy. No, that was wonderful, because when I'm working with one person, I'm working with all of you. You know what I mean? And just maybe some of you get more than Dawn does. Who knows? But it's just, this is what satsang is for, to come and ask your questions and to find out, because I need to know where you're at. I need to know what you're confused about. And we'll work on that a little bit more, Dawn, because I still feel like I didn't really hear your question. You know what I mean? Not that you weren't saying it.
I'm still formulating it.
Yeah. And
Also, what's happening.
yeah.
I'm still figuring out what I'm asking.
I kind of have it a little bit in my head, but like, we do need to kind of work on it, because, and this is the thing, when you start to really scratch down to really, what is it to be human? And what is all this stuff going on in my head? And why am I so crazy? And why am I feeling this way? And why all of this discomfort? And why all of this suffering? You are really at the juicy root of your humanity. And you're asking, I don't want this suffering, yet I am creating this suffering for myself ignorantly, and I don't know how to stop? That's a great question. It's just not an easy one for me to answer. And so that's why I'm here every Wednesday, so that we can little by little keep picking at that and picking at that, because those answers are not easy. On one level, they're simple, but they're not easy when you are approaching mind on the level of mind, you know, when we're talking about going beyond mind. So, you know, keep coming back. I love this. Was juicy satsang. This was really awesome, and I hope they're all like